Okay, excellent. So, got a bunch of people here. This is great. Thank you all. We've got a few people here and a lot of people on Zoom. Thank you all for being here. This is great. So I'm Michael Hanscom. I think a fair number of you know who I am by now, but if not, I'm our program manager for accessible technology, part of our accessibility resources group. My job here is split kind of halfway working with students, making sure they know about the accessible technology we have on campus and how to use it. The other half is working with staff and faculty on making sure that you know about our accessible technology and what you need to do to make sure that what you're doing is compatible with the technology that our students and other faculty and staff and public are going to be using when they access our documents. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. So this is PDFs and accessibility and more as things come up. So I'm going to be focusing primarily on PDFs today, but if other questions come up as we're going along, feel free to toss them out. We'll address them as I can and as there is time, and we'll just go on from there. But yeah, so to start with, PDFs. There we go. Okay. PDF actually stands for portable document format, but sometimes I jokingly refer to it as problematic document format. Because PDFs, we use them all the time. They're all over the place. In some ways, they're really, really good, and in some ways, they are really a bit of a pain. So what we want to do is try to focus on the good stuff and making sure we're paying attention to the good stuff and getting them there and mitigating all the bad things. So a bunch of pros to PDFs. Virtually every modern device can open a PDF. You know that if you send a PDF out, chances are extremely good that people are going to be able to open it at least. They do a really good job of preserving the layout and visual presentation. Once you've made a document, you save it as a PDF, you know that it's going to look like that when it's opened on somebody else's device. And they're difficult to edit. There's a perception of this giving security. You know that people aren't going to be changing the PDFs once you send them out. And it's kind of a perception more than a reality. There certainly are ways to edit PDFs and to.
Hey, Michael. Michael.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you hear
me?
Thank you.
I forgot one button. Thank you. Okay, so let me hop back into the Zoom window. Which Zoom is not making easy for me to do. Give me just a moment as I fumble around on my computer. Or there. Screen Zoom. Okay, yes, I am a professional and I do have some idea what I'm doing. Okay. Do we have a screen now? Okay, yes, I see things in chat. We have a screen. Excellent. Get this bar over to a different screen because I don't need that in the way. Okay, so yeah, so back to what I was talking about. PDFs. They have good things. Everybody can display them, preserve the layout, visual presentation. Difficult to edit, not impossible, but difficult. But there are some downsides. They're really difficult to view on mobile devices with small screens. If you've ever tried to go through a PDF, especially a large PDF on your phone, you know that it involves a lot of pinching and zooming in and sliding around, and it's really kind of obnoxious. The presentation cannot be adjusted for a reader's needs. When you're sending out things like Word documents or native documents of any sort, that gives the user the agency to do things like change the font style or color if it's easier for them to read with different settings on their own. They can adjust the size, things that are a lot more difficult or impossible with PDFs. And then the biggest thing, and what we're addressing today, is that most PDFs out there are either a little bit or entirely inaccessible to people who are using assistive technology. That's not a failing of PDFs. When I came into this job, I had a really, really poor attitude towards PDFs as I was trying to learn about accessibility because they were all so bad. I've learned a lot since then. It turns out you can actually do a lot to make a very accessible PDF it just takes having a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of skill. It can be done. It's just not something that comes naturally or easy. So we're introducing some of those skills today. So basically, to give kind of an overview, and this is this is good kind of fundamental knowledge to have, just thinking about the way PDFs work. There are basically three broad types of PDF that are out there. The first type is a scanned PDF. Someone's gone to a copier or a desktop scanner, scanned it in, saved it as a PDF. Basically, this is just an image that kind of has a PDF wrapper around it. It's in many ways exactly the same as if you double click on a JPEG file or a PNG file and open it up. There's no actual document information on there. It's just a bunch of pixels arranged in an order that makes sense to us visually. These are inaccessible. There's nothing there that gives someone with assistive tech any information about what the content is. The next step is a document that has been printed to PDF. This is a very common thing, and I think most PDFs a lot of times are made this way because this is a function that's been built into both Windows and Mac OS systems for a long time. You just hit print, there's a little button, you can either select a PDF printer, or on the Mac there's a button that save as PDF, and boom, you've got a PDF. Which seems nice, except that basically behind the scenes, the way this works is that when you're printing something, all that the computer does is basically sends the pixels, the image information, to the printer. And because then the printer takes pixels, puts them on paper, and you've got your print. When you print the PDF, it's doing the same thing. It's just sending the pixels to the PDF creator, but that's the only information it gets. So you're still basically, there's a little bit more information there, but not a lot, and it does not carry over any accessibility information within the PDF. So it's an electronic document. It looks better than a scanned document, but it still doesn't have the accessibility information. So these are what I call functionally inaccessible. And then the third kind is something that's been saved as PDF. So when you're creating PDFs, you want to make sure that instead of print to PDF, you go to your document menu and say File, Save As, choose PDF as the export option, and then any accessibility information you have in your original document, assuming you've used headings, you've added alt text to your images, all of this stuff, that then gets saved to the PDF along with the image information so that assistive technology can pick up on all of that. So in a broad sense, those are the three basic types of PDF that you see out there. So here's an example of the first type, a scanned PDF. This is a document I put together. You can see, it's on the image here. There's the scanned PDF. It's all in black and white. It's a little skewed because it wasn't put on the copier the right way. Some of the text lines, if you look closely, are kind of are not entirely straight because the document was a little beat up, probably because I crumpled it up in a ball and stomped on it a few times. But you've seen a lot of scanned PDFs that end up looking like this. So again, as I said, it's just an image inside a PDF container. There's no machine-readable text or accessibility information. And this is entirely inaccessible to users of assistive technology. They open it up and their system is just going to say it's blank. Does them no good whatsoever. So here's that second type. It's printed to PDF. This time, it's the same document, only it looks a lot better visually. There's different colors for the heading levels. The graphic on there of a PDF document logo is now in color. Everything's nice and straight. Looks really good. Basically what this does is there's the page image layer, which is what we see, and there's also a text layer, which contains just a basic text stream of all the characters in the document. And so there are some document readers, things like Acrobat has a document reader built into it, things like the read and write software that our students use. These pick up on that text layer. It's not a lot of information, but there is enough information there that they can read the text out of the document. Nothing fancy, no frills. They can't jump among headings or anything like that, but they can at least get their system to read it to them at a very basic level. But there's no accessibility information. As I said, they can't go from header to header in their software. Images do not have alt text applied to them, so the specialized accessibility information is not there. Another example, the third type, visually, again, to a sighted user, this looks exactly the same. But this has that extra third layer of accessibility information inside the document. These are called tags, and we'll see more about that in a few minutes. So this kind of document has those accessibility tags. This is what assistive technology picks up on. So when someone is using assistive technology or a screen reader, those systems don't actually pay attention to the image layer. They don't even pay attention to the basic text layer. They just look at these tags, and that allows them to go through a document and say, okay, here's a heading, here's a paragraph, here's a list, and now I know how many items are in that list. Here's an image, and there's the alt text attached to it. And that's actually what assistive technology pays attention to. So in the prior two types of documents that don't have that, you're missing all of that extra information. So how are we doing right now? I don't have the ability to take a look at the overall campus of our websites and all the documents that are stored there. But I do have the ability to take a look at our Ally tool that is used in faculty Canvas pages to take a look at what kind of documents we have, how the courses are set up, and how accessible they are. And so right now, just looking at Fall Quarter, in all of the Canvas courses across Highline, we have a little over 31,000 PDFs. There's a good chance that a lot of those, I know there are a lot of faculty who have a lot of PDFs that they may not be using in their active class. They've got it stored within the course shell, but it's not being used. So the number may seem a little inflated. I can't say for sure, but point is, we have a lot of PDFs out there. Of those 31,000, 2,598 or 8% of them are the very first type. That is a scanned image, but it has not been OCR'd, it does not have the text information, it does not have accessibility information. And then there are another 8,000 or 25%, a little over 25% that are untagged. So they're that second type. It's a digital document. They have the basic text layer, but there are no accessibility tags. So again, a student using assistive technology may be able to get some information out of that, but their ability to use the document is very limited still. So together, a little over a third, 10,625% of the PDFs in just this quarter's Canvas courses are inaccessible to users of assistive technology. And I didn't put this on the slide, but even beyond that, even if, and this is again one of the things we'll be looking at in a few minutes here, even if you have a document that is tagged and can be read by assistive technology, that doesn't always mean it's tagged correctly. And so there may be issues with within that PDF that affect how a user of assistive technology is able to interact with it. Are they actually able to get all the information out of it? Does it make sense? When we don't really know that part until we start digging into the PDF and looking at those tags. So there's a lot to do, and but we're going to take a look at that, and there are a few different ways to go about taking care of this. Okay, so if you want to start digging into a PDF, you don't need a screen reader. It can be very helpful if you want to take the time and effort to start playing with a screen reader. If you ever get curious, feel free to get a hold of me. I'll warn you, it's a little overwhelming at first because screen readers tell you everything that you're doing on a computer. If you've ever logged into one of the ADA workstations across campus, or one of your students have, and all of a sudden the computer just starts battling, that's what's going on. It tells you everything that's going on. A little overwhelming at first, but once you get used to it, it is a good way to go through a PDF, but you don't need to do that. Acrobat Pro gives you the tools to review and edit the accessibility tags of a PDF. And a lot of PDFs, especially simpler ones like the sample document I'm showing today most of the time, can be remediated entirely within Acrobat. But then larger or more complex documents, like documents with more layout options, or just large documents like full textbooks or chapters of textbooks, they may need other approaches rather than trying to do it directly within Acrobat. But it can be done eventually. So if you want to start digging into a PDF, you do need to use Adobe Acrobat Pro. There are two versions of Acrobat that are commonly out there. There's Acrobat Reader and there's Acrobat Pro. Highline has an institutional license for Adobe products. So Acrobat, the general version of Acrobat that you're going to find on any of our school computers is going to be Acrobat Pro. So you'll have access to these tools, whether it's a workstation like the ones here in the computer lab, or whether you have a Highline issued laptop. If you're on your own computer as a Highline employee, because of our institutional license, you can download and install actually all of Adobe's products. If you want to play with Photoshop, go for it. You can download and install all of Adobe's products, including Acrobat, with your Highline credentials. Just start by signing into adobe.com with your Highline credentials. There's a little sign button at the top right, as many websites have. Click on Desktop Apps, and then there's an option to download and install Acrobat. Once it's installed, you can just sign into it using your Highline credentials, and you've got it ready to go. So you can do this on a Highline issued machine. You can also do it on your home machine. So to start with, and I don't know if anybody here is playing along. It doesn't look like it, but if you're on a computer at home and you want to play along, go for it. Otherwise, feel free to just watch and enjoy the show. At the end of this, on the very last slide, I do have a link to download this presentation. So you'll have access to this presentation and all my other presentation materials afterwards. And what you want to do is open a PDF in Acrobat Pro. You'll right-click on the very right-hand sidebar, and there will be an option to enable accessibility tags, and that gives you the option to open a little a new pane on the right side of the window. And so that'll let you start digging in. And we'll just keep going on. In fact, I can actually flip over to Acrobat right now. I'll need, let's see, which window is Acrobat? There it is. Okay, and could someone Zoom in chat, because I don't have the main Zoom window open, could you confirm that you're seeing the Acrobat window now? I want to make sure I shared my screen and not just a single window. Okay, yes, we've got yes. Excellent, good. I set it up correctly. Wonderful. Okay, so again, it's once you have Acrobat open, it's just right-clicking over here in the right-hand bar, coming down to accessibility tags, turning that on, and then you see the accessibility tags pop open. Now this, I'll come back to the presentation in a moment, but as you can see already, because this is the scanned document, it has no tags available. So that's one of the first things you'll see. If you're working with a scanned document, there are no tags. I'll swap back to my slideshow now. And this just says exactly what I just did. When you're working with untagged PDFs, you open that tags pane and it'll just say no tags available. And that's how you know that this is, that's how you know there are no tags. I'm kind of stating the obvious at this point. Tagged PDFs. If you have a PDF that has accessibility tags, you'll see those in what we call the tag tree in that pane. So tagged PDFs display the accessibility tags. As I said, these tags are what modern assistive technology uses. And then you can start going through and exploring these tags to give you an idea of how assistive technology sees the document structure and the reading order. And just by looking at this tag tree, we can go down this really quickly here, even without seeing the document itself. As we look down this tag tree, we can see that at the top there's an H1, so we have a first level heading. There's a paragraph below that. There's a list below that, another paragraph. There's a figure, and then there are a series of heading 2 tags followed by paragraphs. So already you've got, even without being able to see it, you can tell that there's a structured document in there and some of the basics of what's in that document. As you're actually working with the document, you'll start to see how those tags relate to the document itself. And again, we'll get more into that in a few minutes. So now demonstration time. I'm gonna, not a few minutes, I'll get into that immediately. Where I'm gonna take a look at a few different PDFs just to take a look at how they're tagged. I have examples of PDFs that are tagged well and PDFs that are tagged poorly. And then just as you have time and you start getting curious and digging into this, I encourage you to start just exploring the PDFs that you have. Open up a PDF, open the tag pane and just start working your way through it to see how what you see in the tag pane relates to what you see in the document itself. I'm just going, I will say that a lot of this, I'm just going over the basics. There are a lot of fine-grained weirdnesses, not really weirdnesses, but just Acrobat can be very fiddly as to how the tags should be structured. And these are just kind of things you learn over time. I'm happy to help with any of those if you ever do have any questions. So coming back to Acrobat, and I need to move my captions down a bit. So again, this is one, I can close out the alt tools. This is one that has, is just a scan document. There are no tags, so there's not a whole lot to look at here. So this sample document, make sure I have the right one. Yes, this is a sample document where I printed it to PDF. And here, you may have seen with scanned PDFs, you don't get, you can't select any of this text. If you try to select it, you just get the little box tool that isn't very useful at all. With a document that's been printed to PDF, because it has that text layer, now you're able to go in. You can tell that Acrobat is able to access the text of the document itself. You can go in, you can select it, you can copy it. However, again, when you open up the tags pane, there are no tags available. So again, it's better than the scanned document, but it's still not compatible with assistive technology. Meanwhile, here we have a version of that same document. Again, we have our text layer. We're able to select text. When I open the tags pane, here's the tags pane, and this is actually the tags pane that I had that I got a screenshot of to show on the prior slide. So here's the tags pane of our document, and you can go through very easily. You can just click on the first tag, and when you click on a tag, when the tag is selected, you'll see a purplish box show up surrounding the part of the document that this tag relates to. So we have our H1 tag there. We have our first paragraph. We have our list. And you can actually, what I find much easier than clicking through, you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to very easily work your way through the PDF and just go through the tags. You can go left and right to open tags. Some tags, when you open them, you will see some of the text and next to what looks like a little cardboard box, and that's basically the container that lives inside the tag that has the content. Most of the time you don't need to worry about that part. You're just interested in the tags themselves. But for things like lists, you can go in and within the list there's a list item. So we have 3 list items here. If you open that, then we have a label, which is either a bullet or a number or whatever separates the items of the list. And then we have the list body, which is the actual text of that. Again, for a lot of times you don't actually need to know the details of all this stuff, but as you start playing with PDFs, you'll start to see these things and figure them out. But then you can just go down through. We have a paragraph here, just marking the end of the paragraph that contains this image. There's the image itself as a figure tag. Here's our heading 2 level, paragraph, heading 2, paragraph. And this is how you can start to go through documents and get a look at that structure and get an idea, okay, is this a well-tagged document? Now, what I'm going to take a look at first is this is a document that was sent to me last week for remediation purposes. This came from one of our classes, and they knew they had the instructor knew that they had the PDF, but Ally was flagging it as needing improvement. So they sent it on to me to take a look at it and see what I could do. And so this is often one of the first things I do when I'm looking at a PDF. I open it up, I open the tags tree, and I just start taking a look to see what happens as I start moving through it. So to start with, it starts with a paragraph, but it's just this little empty paragraph over here on the left, just under the header information. The next thing, there's a section, and a section is just a way of organizing tags. There's a section that has 2 tags. so we start at the top of the document, which seems to make sense. Then we go down to the header information. So far, so good. But now we have a figure. We have an image that's just this circle. Now that's purely decorative. There's really no need for that to be exposed to assistive technology. And if someone with assistive technology was going through using a screen reader, this would just be announced as graphic. We'll get into alt text more later, but this particular image does not have alt text, and so it would just say graphic. They would know that there was an image there, but they wouldn't know what it was, if there was supposed to be content. So it doesn't do anything good there. We jump down to a paragraph. Now, as sighted users, we see this. We see that the text is bold. It's the first text on there. It's centered. We see that as a heading. However, it hasn't been tagged as a heading. It's just another paragraph. Now we jump to a figure. Now we've jumped to the side of the page, and it's the box that contains the chapter outline. Next, we go down to the box to the left of it. Now we go to the text inside that box. And now we jump down to this photo at the bottom right-hand side of the page. Then we jump to the first paragraph of text in the page. Then we jump back over to the chapter outline. Then we jump down to this quote at the bottom of the page. And now we jump over to the second paragraph of the body of the text. So you can see that as we're going through, because we're going through this in the same order that assistive technology would, it's not reading this document in an order that makes any actual kind of logical sense. It's bouncing back and forth across the page. They're going to get a piece of information here, a piece of information here. It's going to be very difficult for someone using assistive technology to really comprehensively follow the information and get what they're supposed to get out of this document. By contrast, we have the same document, only this is where I've gone through and made some edits to the document, worked with the tags to improve the accessibility. So now here, once again, I start at the top. Now the first thing we get is the public speaking project address at the top. Now we have an H1 at the top for the title of the document, Organizing and Outlining. We have our paragraphs for chapter 8, the author and the location. Now we have a section. I made it, and this is where one of the areas where there's a certain amount of just decision making when we're mediating a document on what's the most likely thing what makes the most sense to come next. In this case, because there are chapter objectives and an outline, I decided it made sense to go to those before going into the body of the text. So I just made sure that the chapter objectives came next, then the chapter outline. Now we have our heading 2 for the introduction over on the left. And now as we go through paragraph by paragraph, we have our first paragraph, we have our second paragraph. Again, making a choice of where the quote makes the most sense. It made sense to me to put it after that second paragraph. And then we go back to the third paragraph. And now we're on to the next page where we have another heading 2. But now you can see that as you go through the document, you're actually going through in a method that makes logical sense. And so as someone goes through the document, it's a lot easier for them to understand that. And yes, Derek is asking in the chat, could we show a few examples of how you enacted these changes? Absolutely, that is where I'm going next. So we're on the same wavelength, which is great. So this is just I didn't want to get too deep into this, but this is just kind of a quick demonstration of the difference. Oh, yeah, no rush at all, no worries. That was Derek in chat again. Just quick demonstration of some of the challenges that even with a tagged PDF that may seem at first glance to be ready to go, there may be challenges within that PDF to where it doesn't make as much sense as we would like it to. Now I will swap back to my slideshow and jumping into editing PDF tags. So one thing I will say is if you're working with documents that have been provided to you, there may not be much you can do. But if you're creating your own documents, whenever possible, it's always best to correct the original document to fix accessibility errors. If you create a document, output the PDF, go into the PDF, say, hey, there's all these things I need to fix. You fix all the things in the PDF, send it off, and the next quarter, you know, if this is a syllabus that you reuse or an assignment that changes slightly, next quarter you go back to the original document, you make changes, you throw it out to the PDF, and now you've got to make all those same changes again in the PDF. Much easier to just make the changes in your original document whenever you can. That way you know that when you're outputting the PDF, you've already done all that work and you should be in a much better position. And if the original document is not available, the accessibility tags pane allows you to edit those tags. There's actually quite a bit you can do in there. I'm going to concentrate on just the main ones here. So you can move tags around to correct reading order issues. You can change the type of tag. You can check, edit, or add alt text to images. You can add what I call organizational tags, and we'll get into that in a moment. And now I'm covering up my captions again, so pardon me while I slide that around. You can remove or artifact unnecessary tags. And these are things like that round circle that was in one of the documents that didn't really need to be announced, or the boxes that were behind the chapter outline and the chapter objectives. Those don't need to be announced, and there are ways where we can make sure that those are ignored by assistive technology while still existing within the PDF itself. Okay, so moving tags. If a tag's in the wrong order, you can just move it in the tag tree. You just grab the tag and drag it into the correct place. Because tags can live within other tags in some situations, as you're getting used to this, you might accidentally drag a tag into another tag. You can drag it out, you can undo and try again. Sometimes it's a little fiddly and it might take a little practice to get the aim correct. But I'm going to go back to my tag document. And for instance, here, it's just dragging the tag around. So now I dragged that tag into the wrong place intentionally. So now I have a paragraph that comes before the heading above that. I can just grab that paragraph, drag it back down into place, and now my reading order is as it should be. So tags, you can just drag around so they're in the right order. Okay, back to my slideshow. Changing tag types. This happens a lot. I see incorrect tag types coming a lot is documents that come from Canva. Canva, as many of you know, is a very slick looking, very easy to use online web app that allows you to do desktop publishing, graphic design type of stuff. I have a serious love-hate relationship with Canva that I will admit leans far more to one side of that dichotomy than the other. And one of the things Canva does is it allows you to choose text that looks neat. And this is text that it's a big size or it's a different font. And so as you're putting a Canva document together, you might say, this is how I want it to look. And so you put it into place. What Canva doesn't tell you is that a lot of that text is also given a certain heading level. It might be a heading 3, it might be a little heading 4. But because it doesn't tell you that, you might be using it in what we would think of conceptually as a heading level 1 or 2. And so you end up with a document that has heading levels just all over the place that don't make any sense to someone trying to go through the document. I realize that's a little difficult for me to describe without showing, but I didn't come with a Canva document pre-prepared. So my apologies there. But if you do see a tag that's the wrong type, maybe it's a paragraph that should be a heading, or maybe it's a heading that's at the wrong level, you can right-click on the tag and then choose Properties down at the bottom of the menu. And then that opens an Object Properties window. There's the very first item on there, it says type, and it tells you what type of tag that is. And you can just go through, there's a little pop-up menu. The button is slightly obscured by the menu itself at this point because with my screenshot. But then you can pop that open and choose a different type of tag to use. So again, giving a practical example. In this particular case, we have our heading 1 at the top of the document. We have a heading 2. maybe this heading 2 was supposed to be a heading 3. In this case, it's not, but in a pretend world, maybe this was supposed to be a heading 3. I can just right click on that tag, go down to properties, change my heading to a heading level 3, close that, and there we are. And now as someone is going through the document, they know that we have our first level heading, we have our second level heading, we have our third level heading. They know the structure of the organization of the document as they're going through. I'm going to go ahead and set that back for the moment. So you can change headings. This is again in the demo document. This is one area where at the beginning we have this introduction tag that came up as a paragraph. One of the things I did while I was working on this document to fix that was to go in and change that to a heading level 2, because at that point I had already gone through and made this organizing and outlining, which again came through here as just a paragraph. I had gone through and made that heading level 1 to give the document the organizational structure it needed. Okay, so changing tags is easy to do. Alt text. If there are images in the document, they're always marked with a figure tag. They use rather than just using image, they use figure because this can cover all sorts of situations. Like it could be an image, it could be a photograph, it could be a drawing, it could be a technical diagram. There's lots of possibilities for what a figure might be. But with any figure, you can have alt text. So again, alt text is also contained in that same properties dialog box. So we just right click on the figure, choose properties, which is now slightly obscured by my captions. Then it brings up the object properties window. Jennifer put just a little bit of silliness in the chat. Roses are red, violets are blue, headings are broken, and formatting too. And you kind of need to see that to really understand the joke. But yes, anyway, back to alt text. So in the object properties window, the fourth field down is alternate text for images. And in this particular case, because I'm working with a sample document I created, my alternate text is Adobe PDF logo. So here you can go in, and so you can use that to go in and check images to see whether they have alt text. If they don't, you can add it. If there is alt text, but maybe it's not very good, maybe it says something like Word's favorite alt text automatically generated by Word. You can change that to something that actually gives information. But you can do what you need to make sure that your images have alt text. So again, with a practical example, I'm not going to go to, let me jump down to, here we go. So there's this, so we have this image down here. I was curious, does that have alt text? I can just right click, go to my properties, and no, we don't have alt text. So I might just say, a young man crouches by a library bookshelf and reads a book. And now we have alt text for that image. So as someone is going through using a screen reader, without the alt text, they would just get graphic. This way, they get graphic. A young man crouches by the bookshelf and reads a book, whatever it is exactly that I said. So that's a quick way to review alt text. Organizational tags. So sometimes it can help to use organizational tags to group sections of a document together. We've seen this a little bit in the sample in the sample documents I've played with, but this is going into a little bit more detail. For smaller documents like the sample document that I created, that is just a single page, probably not something you really need to worry about very much. I use section tags a lot when I'm working with a larger document, like text, if it's a full textbook or if it's even a textbook with chapters and sections. I like to use section tags to group parts of the document together just to help me keep everything straight in my mind as I'm working with the document. You can add section tags, and then you can drag other tags inside of them, and then you can drag those section tags around to move a whole group at one time. These tags are ignored by assistive technology, so they do not affect the accessibility at all. They are purely there for someone who is working with the insides of the PDF to help keep things organized. So it's entirely optional. If they work for you, great. If not, yeah, don't even have to worry about it. But here you can see, this is one area where this document came with section tags. In this case, it had the initial paragraph, which I later changed to a heading, the second paragraph, and then the list. So all of that was grouped into this section tag. And then if I wanted to move that, make sure that section was read somewhere else, I could just drag that. So, here, there's one of those areas where I drag it into a tag rather than in between tags. Easy to do. So it's just a way of organizing tags within a document. As I said, if it helps you, great. If not, it's not something you have to worry about. But now if you open a document and you see those section tags, you know what they are. You know that you can dig into them to see what's inside of them. And again, if you do want to create a section tag, you right-click on the tag above where you want to add it, unless you want to drag it around later. Hit New Tag. And then a new tag window pops up. You tell it you want a section tag. And if you want, you can even give that tag a title. Again, it's ignored by assistive technology. It's just there to help you. Sometimes I will do that when I'm working with a document. I'll say, this section is chapter 1. This section is chapter 2. Again, it's purely organizational and internal. And then the section shows up in the tag tree. You can drag other tags into it. You can group them together. You can drag them around within the document. And it's, again, as I've said, I think a few times right now, because I ramble when I'm doing these things live, it's just a way to group those tags together, help you organize the document, help you organize the tags within the document. Okay, the last thing I want to take a look at as far as editing is artifacting content. And this is if the document has content that should not be read by a screen reader, it's likely to either it simply doesn't need to be, or it's likely to cause confusion. That content can be removed from the tag tree by marking it as an artifact. Artifacting does not affect the visual presentation of the document. The image will stay exactly the same for someone who is sighted. It'll still have all the decorative elements it had before. It just makes sure that those aren't causing confusion for someone who's using assistive technology. And this is one of the few times when you actually do want to work with the little content box that's held within a tag rather than working with the tag itself. And so to artifact content, we open the tag until we get to that little content box. We then right-click on that content item. And again, I'm bouncing my captions around. We have change tag to artifact. And we select that. It'll come up with a little dialog box asking what kind of artifact. To be completely honest, I have absolutely no idea what these various options mean. I haven't changed any of them. I just accept the defaults and click OK, and it works great. One of these days, I will have the time, energy, and curiosity all at the same time to go digging around and figure out what the different options mean. And if I ever really do need to care about them, that day has not come yet. So you don't have to worry about it either. You can just say OK, click that, and then you'll see the content item disappear, and you'll just have an empty tag. At that point, you can delete the empty tag. You can leave it if you want, but it's not doing anything at this point. You can delete the empty tag so it's not just hanging out there. And then that content item has been removed from the tag tree without affecting the visual part of the document. So again, as a practical example, I'll go back up to the top where we had our first figure was that round circle, which there's absolutely no reason for a screen reader to say graphic or even graphic round circle if you wanted to add alt text to it. So I can just go in there, open the figure tag, grab the content item, right click, change tag to artifact. There's my what do you want to do? I say just do what I tell you. I hit OK. And the content item disappears and I'm left with the empty tag. I can then either use my delete key or I can use the delete tag command and that tag disappears. And that's all there is to it. And now you don't have any extraneous information that could confuse people as they're working their way through the document. Now, the obvious next question is, what about those first couple kinds of documents that don't have tags? There are a few different things we can do here. The first one is if you're working within Acrobat Pro, Acrobat can't, I'm sorry, give me just a moment. I'm going to grab a drink. I'm talking a lot more than I usually do. Okay. Acrobat can't automatically tag a document. It's one of these magical, somewhere in the cloud, AI-based things where you don't really know you don't really know how it's making the decisions it's doing. It just does it, and then you get tags. It works best for simpler text-heavy documents. More complex documents, it's not going to do as good a job with. It's not going to add alt text to images, so it will often recognize images, but it won't. But it doesn't know what the content of the images are or why they're there. So you'll need to add alt text manually. And the auto tagging is often not perfect. So we always recommend going in and checking those tags as we've been looking at so far to make sure that it's been tagged correctly. To auto tag a document, when you have that tags pane open and it says no tags available, there's a little 3-dot ellipsis menu at the top right there. When you open that, you can just click the auto tag document. Acrobat will say, cool, I'm going to do my thing. It'll think for a couple moments, and then it'll give you and then it'll pop up the tag tree. Now this is an interesting example too, because again, this is the same sample document, the same one-page sample document that I created that I was showing earlier. You saw my tag tree earlier, even if you haven't memorized it, that's fine. I don't expect that. But you can take a look at this tag tree, and you can see some interesting differences already. Immediately, you can see that it has those section tags. So where I had a heading level 2 and then a paragraph underneath that, it grouped each of those into sections. Great, there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But at the very top, our document starts with an H2. And then it recognized that the headings that came after it were a slightly different style, so it assigned them H3s, but there's no H1. And any document outline really should start with a H1, with a heading level 1 before it moves on to H2. Otherwise, when someone opens a document, if the first thing they hear is a heading level 2, well, what does that mean? Is that a mistake? Or is that intentional? Is there a heading level 1 that for some reason I'm not finding? Is the document being read in the wrong order? Why am I starting with a heading level 2? And so that can introduce a little bit of confusion. So this is a situation where once that tag tree was created, once I did the auto tagging, I'm going to take a look at the tag tree, start going through it, and say, okay, actually, I want that to be an H1, and I want all the heading levels below it to be H2, so that the document outline makes sense. So auto tagging is useful, but not perfect, which describes a number of things, both in this topic and, well, me. Actually, I try to be useful, but I am definitely not perfect. The next thing is a new tool that we have just implemented at Highline recently. It's a program called Census Access. This is available in a few ways. The way I'm talking about here is that it's available on the document remediation page of the Accessible Technology website for Highline. But it is actually built into Canvas. If you've suddenly noticed that there's a lot of black circles with a white S in them attached to a lot of things in your Canvas courses, that's part of the Census Access tool. And broadly, what Census Access is a tool for converting documents from one type of document to another, usually for accessibility reasons. It's there on the back end to allow us to convert documents if we need to. It's actually also there for students, So if you have a document that a student, for one reason or another, is having difficulty accessing, they have the ability to use Census Access to translate that document into another format that might work better for them. Now, thank you, Jenny. Jenny put the accessibility main address into the Zoom chat. Like Acrobat's auto tagging, Census Access works best with simpler text, primarily text documents, and will struggle with complex layouts and graphic-rich documents. So I've had people try and throw flowcharts, organizational charts at it. I've seen people try to throw PowerPoint presentations at it, or even newsletters created in Canva. And it does a very valiant job that is absolutely horrible once it's done. But with text documents, like the basic documents that I've been using as my sample, we can do a fairly decent job with those. So to use Census Access, when you go to the document remediation webpage, there's a lot of information on there. I mean, as you can tell just by my talking, I tend to use 50 words from 5 will do. I try not to do that too much on the web, but there's a lot of information to convey. So scroll down a little bit on the document remediation page, and you'll see the green border around the Census Access form. And so to use that, you just select a file, choose a file that you'd like to remediate on your computer, and then hit the upload button. Census Access will then ask a couple questions. What kind of conversion do you want? By default, it's the first choices. It'll change it to an audio file. It's an AI-based reader to create an MP3 audio file out of it. It can change it to a Braille format if someone is using a Braille keyboard. It can change it to an ebook. Ebooks are often more accessible than some other document formats. Or you can do an accessibility conversion, which is what we're doing here. It'll ask you what the target format you want is. It defaults to Microsoft Word, which I will say is a great option. As I mentioned earlier, one of the advantages to giving people Word documents is that they have that ability to change the font size, change the font style, change the colors. You're allowing them the agency to view that document in whatever way works best for them. However, if you do want to stay with a PDF for any reason, then you just change your target format to PDF. There are two options. The one I recommend is tagged PDF image over text. Really, really briefly, the differences between the two, whether it's text over image or image over text. As I talked about, Acrobat has a text layer and an image layer. It affects how those are put together in the document. There's no way for me to do this briefly, so I'm just going to say, if you want to know the details, get a hold of me, and I'll fumble my way through it. For the purposes of this presentation, I say just go with the recommendation of tagged PDF image over text. That's what will look the best and work the best for most students, most situations. It'll ask you for your Highline email address because this is locked down to Highline people because it's a publicly accessible web page. Well, we don't want those Green River people using they have Census Access too, I'm pretty sure. So you enter your Highline email, click submit, and a little bit later, sometimes with a small document, just a few minutes. If it's a larger document, it might take a couple hours. You'll get an email from Census Access saying, hey, here's your document, and you'll be able to download that PDF. To show you, let me go back to Acrobat again. So here I have sample document. I want to make sure I'm opening the right one. I did not open it. Give me just a moment to go to my folder and grab the right file. There we are, Census Access conversion. So here, I took that scanned document, I uploaded it to Census Access, and this is what it is sent back to me. So one of the things that I was nicely surprised by, it actually fixed the skew. It can't fix the slight distortion from when I crumpled it, but it did actually straighten the document, which was kind of a nice surprise. When I go into the tags, As with the Adobe auto tagging, it's not perfect, but it does a pretty good job. I would want to go in and manually fix some of these things, like it's not catching the headings, they're just marked as paragraphs. But it grabbed the paragraphs, it even recognized that as a list. And so we have a nice 3-item list there. Here it got a little bit confused because it is a text recognition engine. It got a little bit confused and it didn't see the image as an image. It actually recognized the letters PDF and the term Adobe. But then it goes through the rest of the document. And it does, with text documents, it will do a fairly reasonable job of getting a basically tagged and accessible PDF. May not be absolutely perfect, but it's much better than the untagged scanned document that this started with. And when I did this test this morning, it took, I think, about 3 minutes for this document to come back to me. Census Access is actually fairly quick most of the time. So that's a great tool. It's available to anyone with a highline.edu address, and this includes students, so they're welcome. They can use the form too, in addition to using it through Canvas. Works very nicely for a lot of things, but not everything. Oh, I forgot I had this slide. This is basically the same thing I just showed, is that the converted file should be checked in Acrobat Pro to verify the tags, correct them if they need to be corrected. The last option is manual remediation. Down below the Census Access form on that same web page is an option for manual remediation. So if Census Access doesn't work, or if it's just a large document, or it's more complex, or it's just big enough that you know Census Access is probably going to choke on it, and you don't want to or have the time to take care of it yourself, well, you can submit your document for manual remediation. I didn't take screenshots of this, but it links to just a standard Google form. You can upload up to 10 documents at a time. It asks you a couple of questions about who you are, and is this a rush job because the student needs it now, or are you just working ahead and identifying things that need to be fixed, which is great. We encourage that. You'll take those documents. Manual remediation works similar to Census Access. You upload, and the document comes back to you. Only instead of an automated system, the remediation is done by a human, specifically me. So the email comes to me. I open up the PDFs. I have more specialized software on my system that I can use to do the manual remediation. Sometimes I'll do it with an Acrobat. Sometimes I use specialized software. This is a more accurate process because, again, you have a human looking at these things. However, it is slower because it's me, and I do have other things to do from time to time as well. So the turnaround time on that will depend on the document's complexity and my workload. Usually, I can get things back to people within a week or so, a few days to a week for standard documents. If you're sending me a textbook, it might take a couple weeks, but I get through them as quickly as I can. And that's the overview. So thank you for being here. I am very open to questions, whether they are about PDFs or just, let me move the captions if people do want to scan that QR code, or anything else. Then you can also download the presentation, and that folder has all my other materials, so you can take a peek at the different PDFs I was showing off. And I already have one question here. Yes, I've got a couple, yay. And actually, if I could, we're gonna use the microphone so everybody on Zoom can hear too.
So I'm interested in learning, once you tag the document, what does it look like when it's used by that accessible technology?
Oh,
why is this relevant? Like, what happens after we tag it?
oh, absolutely. Sure.
Interesting to see.
Yeah. I can do a, okay, Trenton, didn't find anything about Census Access on the accessibility website. Okay, yes, there is. That's going to be a quicker question to answer. I'm going to do that really quickly, then I'll jump back to the question I just got. So I'm going to jump over to, there we are, Chrome, accessibility, highline.edu. And on the accessibility.highline.edu page, if you go under training and resources, document remediation is the page that you should look for. And I'm also seeing that there may be a problem with the bit.ly URL, which is unfortunate. I can't do anything about that right now. We will be posting we will be posting slides and such afterwards also. So there will be other ways to get the documents if you can't get them from the bit.ly. I'm sorry that's not working. I'm not sure what I did there. But okay, so what I'm going to do here is, let's see, let me make sure, I believe that NVDA, yes. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to launch NVDA, which is the screen reader we have installed on our machines here. This is a nice free screen reader. You're going to hear it start to battle pretty quickly here. So I will mitigate that as much as I can.
Most commands for controlling NVDA. No. No
Let me do that
accessibility
now.
setup assistant dialog. Cancel. Next accessibility. Next accessibilities. Next access done.
I'm
Unknown
just-
title. Adobe Acrobat. 64-bit.
Okay, shush. Okay, so as you were hearing, I hope people online were hearing that. I don't remember if I shared computer audio or not, so I hope Zoom people will be able to hear that also.
Everyone.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, alert.
Yeah, okay. Yes. Like I said, it reads everything. So a screen reader.
Header.
So I'm going to.
Here, this document isn't accessible to a screen reader.
Well, that's one of the things you'll get when a screen reader is running.
Based on your
Stop. When a screen reader is running, Acrobat, they are working on making improvements. Acrobat can make an attempt to prepare a document for reading based on your screen reader settings. It will only pop this dialog box up if a screen reader is actively running at the moment. Doesn't always do a great job. I'm going to start by saying cancel because it doesn't always do this, and not everybody is going to have this option.
Cancel PDF accessibility sample document scan.pdf. Adobe Acrobat. 64-bit. Unknown.
Yep. So it reads the title of the document, and then it just says unknown. It can't read anything. It can't read anything other than that. If I try and tell it to. Yep. None of my keys are doing anything to try and navigate throughout this.
Upload.
So basically, it just it doesn't do anything.
Top header.
If I go to
one less heading level 1 page heading level 1 PDF accessibility sample document.
Okay, so I'm just going to start this reading. It's at the top now, and as you heard, you might have just heard it say it said heading level 1 PDF accessibility sample document, and we'll
heading level 1 PDF accessibility sample document. This document was created in Word and is being saved 3 ways. List with 3 items. 1. Printed and scanned to PDF. 2. Exported using print to PDF. 3. Exported using save as PDF. Out of list. Melissa Molik has left the meeting alert. Graphic Adobe PDF logo. Heading level 2 printed and scanned.
Okay. So, as you heard, it said heading level 1, read it all out, read the paragraphs. It announced that you were in a list and how many list items there were. It announced the graphic and the alt text. Said heading level 2, printed and scanned. And that's at its most basic. That's what a screen reader does. Is it works its way through a document. People also have the ability to do things like I can use. Let's see.
Printed to PDF heading level 2. Saved as PDF heading level 2. An important caveat heading level 2.
So I can use keys to navigate heading by heading. So just as a sighted user can go through this document, we see the different font styles. We see the style, size, color. We can skim through visually and see, okay, these are the different sections of the document. with a well-formatted document, a screen reader user can do the same thing and use the H key to jump from heading to heading or backwards.
Save as PDF heading. Printed to PDF heading. Printed and scanned heading level 2. PDF accessibility sample document heading level 1.
So they can navigate through the document that way. There are a number of other things you can do with a screen reader. They can call up lists of all the links in the document. They can actually call up a list of the headers. And so rather than going through one by one, they can just basically get a document outline that they can go through. Gives them a lot of ability to interact with the document itself. But again, if that information isn't there, at best, like with
One PDF. Prepare top header. CAD PDF accessibility sample document. Print to PDF.pdf.
Let's see if I can get this reading. Sometimes it'll work with these and sometimes it won't. Yeah, this time I'm not getting it to read at all, but sometimes with a untagged document, it would start reading through, but you wouldn't get things like heading level 1, heading level 2. It would just say graphic instead of saying graphic Adobe PDF logo. Because again, it doesn't have the extra information that the accessibility tags provide. So I'm going to quit out of NVDA now. So I don't remember how long I'm here for. When do I stop? 30. Okay, so I've got about 7 minutes. Okay, did that give you a good idea? Okay, awesome. And yes, and I'm going to run the microphone over. Yep. Simple questions are good.
In the accessibility checker in Canvas, those symbols like the green, orange, and red,
Yes.
do they just correspond to the 3 types of PDF?
I wish it were that easy. The honest answer is I don't exactly know how they they do those. I do know if it's red and like all the way over on the left, that's going to be a scanned untagged. I think if it's like red or maybe, because I think it can determine the difference between scanned, tagged.
I thought orange was like text, but it's like text.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I believe, I am not 100% sure, but it's at least a good idea that probably red on the PDF in LI is scanned, orange is going to be recognized with the text layer but untagged, and then green will be tagged. Yeah, so probably. So the best I can say there. Yes.
Is the PDF tag the only way to do alt text for an image in a PDF, or is there like a right click option for adding text?
The only way I know is to go through the tags. I don't believe you can add alt text. Well, the best way, of course, to add alt text, if you can, is to do it like in the Word document or the PowerPoint or whatever you're creating your document in. But within Acrobat itself, the only way I know of is to go through the tag tree and the the object properties there. I'm not seeing any more questions in chat other than my broken Bitly URL. Okay, so we had someone here try to census upload. Oh yeah, oh wow, that's okay. Sounds like you did exactly what I told you to, and it didn't work. So, I mean, so someone here used Census Access. They got the email back, and at a brief glance, it looks kind of okay until you realize that all the text is absolute gibberish characters. I'm kind of sorry I can't easily show this on screen just so that everybody on Zoom can see this too. But yeah, that is looks more like something I'd see displayed on a screen on an alien ship in Star Trek than in anything that would help here. So yes, there are going to be situations where even though it seems like it should work, it does not. And yes, in that case, go ahead, and if you do need it, then go ahead and send it through to me. And yeah, absolutely. I don't know, maybe there's something about the, because it's nothing to do with your phone because it's all done somewhere else.
I just did the same thing with the same document and I got the alien looking thing when I did text over image and I did again because I forgot which one you said. I did image over text, it worked out fine. So maybe by accident you choose the one.
Yeah.
You chose each option and it gave you alien both times.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, the thing that I'd be interested to see there, actually, if you could save those files and email them to me so I can take a look at them, because okay, so it was tried twice, once as the text over image and once as the image over text. What I would expect is that image over text, I would have expected to come back looking correct because it should have kept the page image as it was. And then the recognized text would have been present but not visible. And where text over image, just kind of puts those layers around. And that's where I would have expected to see what I saw with yours, where we saw the garbage text. What I'd be curious about is if it was done that way with image over text, would it have returned something that looked like it was done properly? But then if I took a look at the underlying text part, is that actually all that weird garbage characters? So would it look like it was done correctly, but still be problematic when looked at in more detail? So not really sure without looking at the files, but it's, Census Access is very good. We've got a lot of good results out of it, but it is, like I said, it is not perfect, and every so often it'll just decide to do something weird. And it's getting towards the end of it on a Friday. It's probably tired too. Anything else in person or online? I'm seeing a few thank yous, and thank you all for being here. I love that there were this many people that came to this. I don't know what my current number count is, but 42. Still, y'all hung around through the whole thing. I didn't bore too many people too horribly. That's great. I'm sorry? Oh, your next session is here. You're not actually interested in me. You're just waiting for the next thing to come along. Okay, that's good. Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, well, I guess I can go ahead and wrap it up on time even. That's wonderful. Thank you all for being here. I hope this helped. As I said, if you do have questions, feel free to get a hold of me. I'm sorry about the bit.ly links not working, but we will get links out. The committee will be getting links out to all of today's presentations later on, so you'll have those, plus you'll be able to get all the documents, plus the recording and all of that later on. And thank you all very much, and enjoy the rest of your day, and then enjoy the weekend.